What's up, HyperFast Nation? On this episode of the show, I sat down with an amazing agent who has been in real estate for nearly 2 decades. Tons of nuggets dropped in this episode. She sells 50 to 60 homes a year with just her and some administrative support and a showing assistant, which is amazing. And this year, this is even more amazing, by the way. This year, in 2022, she's up over $10 million in sales volume from 2021. Very few people in the world can probably say that. Welcome to the show, Amanda Siftar. Welcome to the show, Amanda. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to have you on, another fellow Floridian with an amazing story in real estate, long career, lots of sales. You're actually increasing during a year when most people are not, which I'm sure we'll talk about, doing all of this while being a mother of 4. So lots to talk about, but give people the quick version of who you are and how you got to this point in your life where you're selling close to 40 million this year.
Yeah, so I've been licensed for 17 years. I actually got started with one of the top luxury firms in Tampa, and at that time I was 24. So they actually rejected me 4 times before they actually let me into the firm. They kept saying, well, you have no experience, go get experience and then come back. And on the 4th try, I ended up interviewing with a totally different person who kind of saw the potential. So I started my career in developer services, which is condominiums. And that was during the whole boom. So it was, a quick transition from a salary to almost 6 figures in about 3 months. And so, it was one of those things where I thought I was amazing and that I could do anything. And then, of course, the market took a turn. I actually had to switch over from condominium sales to general real estate, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I built everything there from scratch. I had my first child at that time. So I went from 6 figures per year down to about $1,500, and then worked my way back up in trying to kind of navigate how to do that in a whole different part of real estate that's entirely different. And of course, having children to add to that, layer of, trying to work around those things. So it was crazy, but yeah, I've been now doing it for 17 years. And in that time, managed a family, now top 1% in actually the nation, but 1% in Florida, 1% in Tampa, and in the nation. So I generally close somewhere between 50 and 60 houses per year. That is me with, a showing assistant and some administrative help. That's not me with 10 people. So it's very, very much a busy schedule and trying to navigate that with kids.
Yeah, that's, I'm tired just thinking about that many homes. That's amazing. What lessons did you learn or things that maybe helped you, back in 07, 08, 09, that time frame that maybe helped you for the time period that we're in now? I'm not saying that they're the same, by the way, in case you're listening to this. I don't think they are, but there probably are some lessons you learned back then that are helping you today.
Yeah, I would say back then it was interesting because I basically had to start over during probably one of the most difficult times to start. And so what I ended up developing at that time was, I would say, maybe a better work ethic. So what I felt like I had to do to compete with other people in that market was do more for my buyers and sellers. So just as a few examples, I would stage all of my houses myself personally. I went to the extreme. I was organizing their homes, cleaning their homes. Now, I don't necessarily do as much of that today, but at that time, I really wanted to show the value. And so I basically looked at every single part of the real estate transaction and thought, okay, how can I do this and how can I do it at a higher level than the next person? And so when I was going and competing, it was a little bit easier for me to kind of win. We had very limited options at that time, unless you were going to go short sale or, REO, and neither of those were, things that I ever pursued. So had to kind of beat the competition that way.
That's interesting that you didn't go REO. A lot of people did back then. You still obviously increase your market share through, sounds like hard work, solving buyer and seller problems, which is probably a huge opportunity for people right now, agents right now. Like, if you can improve your sales skills, add value, this could be the greatest opportunity, of your career. I think what might help you in looking back from, this is like 15 years ago now to today's market is I don't know if REO will become a big thing like it was back then, because I think back then 1 in 4 people had negative equity in their house, and today that's less than 1%. It was like a really short window of, call it frothy and peakness, and people had to put money down. Like there haven't been a lot of bad loans like there was back then. So I think right now what's going on is it's almost like a stalemate. I saw this post today that said buyers think it's 2008, sellers think it's 2021. So in a lot of markets, there's just less activity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what we're seeing now is definitely different than at that time. You're right, it's a stalemate. People want to move. They feel kind of forced to stay, however, because they think to themselves, well, I just refinanced, I'm at a 2 point something or 3 point something rate. For me to move to that next home, I'm going to be increasing my payment. So what we're going to have to do going into 2023, besides focus on people that have no choice but to move, right? So people that are maybe moving to and from, Florida in my case, or perhaps divorce or some sort of situation where it's new baby. But we'll call it the move up, move down buyers that would move if there was something out there for them. It's a little bit of a different challenge because they want to go, but they also don't necessarily want to pay more to go. So what I'm trying to now do, or I'm going to be incorporating into 2023, is obviously a lot of agents are using buy downs. That is certainly a helpful thing because it is making the payments feel more like last year. But at the same time, if we really dig in and we look at, well, the house prices have decreased to some extent, right? We're still above because we increased at such a level that it was, really not sustainable. So, looking at a $500,000 house, for example, maybe right now we're 5% less than that. So maybe your payments are a little bit higher, but because you're saving that money, by the time these rates stabilize, I believe it'll actually be a wash. So I think if we can just get through this little hump of 1 to 2 years, then I think buyers will be in great shape. And I think they have to be less focused on payment and more, a little bit big picture thinking here. So I'm trying to educate everybody on that.
Well, in most cases, the rents have skyrocketed as well. So True. I think there's that element. The thing about people not moving because they already have a low interest rate is kind of interesting. I saw a stat out the other day that said, and these are ballpark figures, but I think previously first-time home buyers made up like 35% of the overall buyer market, and now it's into the 40s. So I think you are seeing evidence of less move up, move down, more first-time home buyers. So is that something you've been thinking about, or maybe that you'll focus on more? Is the first-time buyer?
I think I'm going to shift my gears, more to first buyer, of course, cash, right? So if you've got I will call it luxury buyer or somebody that's cash, they don't seem to be as bothered. So focusing on that and shifting the messaging. So, what our online messaging is, whatever our social media presence is, shifting the gears a little bit on that going into next year. And then, for the move up buyers that kind of feel a little stuck, an interim solution could be to rent out their current home, because if they are in the 2s or 3s, the rents are, as you've just said, they're way higher than they were. So they could potentially cover some of that gap by renting it and then sell maybe 1 to 2 years from now when everything, kind of starts to, I don't want to use the word stabilize, but, balance out. So there's some creative solutions if we really dig and come up with even those move up, buyers.
Why do you think you are up this year overall when a lot of people are down?
I think I hate to say that I'm blessed in the sense that because I've been such a staple in the community, and you always say, and your wife always says, to be the mayor of your town, right? And I think you guys taught me that about 5-6 years ago. So because I'm in many cases in the community, I'm giving, I say, free advice, if people have questions, nothing expected in return. People have just started to, understand my name. And I think as we're in a market that is tougher, people are going to start seeking out people that they know, understand the market. And so some of the agents that haven't had that time to build that may want to consider getting in with a team that does that, or they need to shift their branding to kind of offset that.
Yeah, one thing I've maybe wondered about, which would be interesting to get another Floridian's perspective on, is Florida in a better spot right now than the rest of the country, which would be an interesting thought. I think I've seen some signs of that, but it's interesting to me because 15 years ago, Florida was like leading the way in the crash. But it seems to be overall doing better than a lot of other high priced areas.
It's interesting because I watch the news and I kind of, look at, what the market is doing, what places are starting to take a hit. I think we've seen a little bit of a price adjustment, but if you really stop and think about it, we went up almost 30% in a very short period of time. So when people are complaining that our prices may have decreased, I would argue that they perhaps have just went up a little faster than they should have. So I think Florida's in great shape. Interestingly, we don't have a ton of inventory and we still have a lot of demand. I really feel like we're going to do well during whatever this next year or two brings. I think we're going to do well, compared to the rest of the country.
So let's talk a little bit about work-life balance. 50 to 60 homes a year. You've got a showing assistant, administrative help, 4 kids. How do you kind of balance all of that? Because I'm sure you're getting requests from buyers and sellers that create, all sorts of times a day, weekends.
Yeah. So that's one of my goals going into 2023. I'm gonna work on that part because you're right. It is 24/7. But really, one of the things I hear quite often is, well, I can't afford childcare. Now, my youngest is 5. So at this point, we're in school. We don't have that concern. But I would argue that even if somebody has children, they're trying to figure out how to do a business with children, they need to find, I started where I had a mother helper, a person in one of my mom's group, and we would trade services, right? So I would say 3 to 4 hours, you take my kid and then we're going to, switch. So every person hopefully has the ability to get some time to build that business. And then, of course, as time went on, I was able to do school and such. But so definitely having some time of the day to have, complete concentration is helpful. I did a lot of my stuff at night, right? So 10 o'clock to midnight, I would, follow up on file things. And then, it just over time, I ended up getting a nanny. So that was definitely helpful. On the weekends, what I do, it's interesting because even now it's very difficult for me to plan my weekends. So what I generally do is if somebody said to me, I'd like to go see in such and such area, I actually take my kids with me. I take my husband with me. And then what I do is I leave whatever activity we're doing for 30 minutes to go show that specific home. And we center the activity around whatever's within the radius of that home. So we kind of found, different pockets within those specific areas of Tampa. And so we've just adjusted and we kind of go with the flow.
Do the clients know that is going on? Because I'm just thinking maybe that helps you close them quicker, if they know your family's kind of doing something.
Sometimes they do, yeah. But I generally, a lot of times if they're outside my area, I say I give them away. I have somebody to assist with that. But every once in a while, if it's a customer I've worked with before, I'll find myself going there. So yeah, they know, and many of my customers have gotten to the point now where they text me first. Hey, call me when you have a moment, right? As opposed to calling me because they know I have kids and they know that I'm going to call them as soon as I get a moment.
What have you done to elevate your price point over the years? Because it seems like, part of why maybe you're selling a higher volume is if you're always between 50 to 60 deals, is that the price point has gone up. Now, obviously, the market going up in general has to do with some of that, but I'm sure not all of it. So what have you done over the years to increase your price point to, which I think is making better use of your time?
Yeah. So a couple of things that have helped me personally, obviously me moving into areas that are surrounding that, right? So zip codes, even if you're not in that specific neighborhood that is at that higher level, you're nearby. Because I do find that people at a higher level or a higher price point tend to like to work with people that really understand the area. So if you don't live in that area, you've got to make sure that you relate to them, that you understand it. So, before you go to that listing appointment, you would want to go drive by, understand, really study, because I find that people at higher price points a lot of time have done a lot more homework than you. And if they feel like they know more than you, they're not going to hire you. So it's almost like you have to be prepared for anything, right? So that you have a response if it comes up. And then, of course, I think for me, helping with the staging and helping with the organization and making it more of a concierge level service where they don't have to think about anything has helped me elevate, because they really don't have time to think about those things. They just want it to be done. So I think to appeal to those people, you really need to develop more of a concierge type program so that they feel like they're well taken care of.
Yeah, I think living in the area certainly helps. And then if you don't live in the area, study it really well. Like there's the
I agree.
Semi-famous example, I guess, of Ryan Serhant during the early stages of the pandemic. I think a lot of New York real estate was slow. He actually had a buyer who wanted to move down to Palm Beach County, and I'm pretty sure he flew down, studied the country clubs, the schools, all that kind of stuff for a week, and then got $100 million plus sale on one of the beach homes.
Right.
And you just quickly became an expert.
No, I totally agree with that. And that is actually brilliant. A lot of times when I go outside of, we'll call it my area for listings, I do tons of homework, because again, when they say to you, well, do you really know this area? And I say, well, not only do I know this area, but I've already developed a brochure that talks about your country clubs, your pools, what's the shopping within 2 miles of here. And so I've actually gone to the level of creating something for them so that by the time I've left their home, they know that I'm the person to sell that home.
Now you've recently made a pretty big shift in your career. So do you want to take a minute to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I was with like I said, the premier luxury real estate company here in Tampa. I was with them for 17 years. They are an amazing firm. I actually cried when I left, but I ended up making the shift over to EXP. And the reason I did that was because I felt like for the dollars I was spending, as my production went up, the dollars went up, right? And so I felt like with those dollars, was I really getting the value back? And I felt like, to go to EXP, they still offered the same types of tools, and at the cost level was significantly less than what I was spending. So I felt like if I took the funds I was paying to my brokerage, right? A lot of these bigger companies have larger splits. If I took that same money and allocated it, especially going into a time like this, right, where we may need to spend more on digital or print ads and such, I felt like if I took that money and shifted it, it would help me, elevate my business to the next level. The other reason I shifted to EXP was because I felt like I liked what I was seeing in terms of the coaching, and it felt like, or it feels like, the agents are all there to really support each other. And that was, I never really realized that about EXP. I never actually gave it any thought until, a few months ago. But I think that they have shifted into a, help agents grow mentality. And I feel like that is, this is just the beginning of what's going to be future, with that. So I think that it was the right time to make the move.
I like that you are really focused on how can I use that savings from the commission splits to go out and expand the business? A lot of people might just look at it as an extra, amount of money in their pocket, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just kind of shows the business mind and acumen that you have to want to use that to go fuel more business, which is great. And the coaching aspect of it, I couldn't agree more from what I've seen there as well, from EXP and what different groups will offer. So I know, when if people are interested in joining, they're gonna, with you at EXP, they're gonna get certain benefits and coaching that they might not necessarily get, with a different person there. So do you want to maybe talk for a second about, the types of people that you would be interested in helping make the transition to EXP, with you as their sponsor?
Sure. I would say for me personally, one of my goals moving forward, I have always had the desire, even before EXP, to help other families grow, to kind of all those mistakes I made in the 17 years, which there are plenty. How do I time manage with kids? How can I get my nights back? Are there things that we can do to, shift things over to maybe perhaps, like we talked about, an assistant, or, having, taking days off. So for me personally, I would like to help, especially, young families or people with kids, kind of help navigate that going forward. The other thing I would say is, and I say luxury, right? In Tampa, $1 million plus, we consider luxury, and different markets it may be different, but helping people really kind of just develop their business at a higher level so that they can go in and feel confident going forward and speaking with sellers and or buyers for that matter. So I'm looking forward to growing that.
So if you want to learn luxury, how to be, I would call it highly efficient as a salesperson, 50 to 60 deals with just some administrative support, showing support. Right. Definitely reach out to Amanda if people want to learn more about, you sponsoring them at EXP. How should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say for now, I'm actually just partnered with a curator. Curator's building my website as we speak, but for now, my group is Amanda Siftar Group on Facebook, and my cell phone's 813-857-9093. All
right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we wrap up, I always end with a HyperFast round of Q&A. If you're ready for for it.
Sure.
What's your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate agent?
Okay. Well, my biggest piece of advice is, if you're not on a team and you don't want to get on a team, do as many coaching, even if it's not paid coaching. Watch as many coaching programs as you can on dealing with buyers, dealing with sellers, because if you don't, you will spend forever trying to figure it out. Trust me.
What's the biggest mistake you see seasoned or experienced real estate agents making?
Getting too set in your ways. Thinking that things that worked maybe 10 years ago still work. I think that we have to understand that the consumer is much smarter than we are. We have Zillow and we have all these things that have made the consumer smarter than the agent. So if we are not one step ahead of that, the sellers, buyers will recognize that, and they'll drop us as quickly as they found us.
What's the biggest challenge you've had in your career, and what did you learn from it?
I would say my biggest challenge right now is developing time management. The biggest challenge that was the most difficult to develop was when having people call 24/7 and helping sellers understand that, some of these things don't need to happen at 9 o'clock at night. They can wait until the next day. So, better follow-up systems so that we don't have people calling us at, 9 o'clock at night unless we're writing an offer.
All right, last one. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I hope to see, what I would like to see is the same volume I'm at now, but in incorporating 3 to 5 agents that are, I say, equally skilled, that could bring us to $100+ million team, providing amazing service to our buyers and sellers, and just operating at a high level.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your amazing story and lessons from your career. It was awesome. I'm sure people listening got tons of value out of it. So thank you so much for that. And to all of our listeners and viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you share this episode with other real estate agents or people that you think would be interested. And we will see you next time.